Sebastián Mejía, co-founder and CSO of Rappi. We do a lot of introductions. So introductions from entrepreneurs, introductions from other investors that can connect you. I think a warm introduction is much better than a cold introduction or a cold email. So that's typically what we do. Sequoia always makes fun of us because they tell me that I've sent the most corny and romantic email to them ever. But the story of how we met them is funny because we were doing our A, and I was flying between San Francisco and New York. And I was coming back from New York to San Francisco on a red-eye flight, and I boarded, and of course I'm going to seat 34B in the middle, and I see a partner of Sequoia coming into the plane, and I remember he sat down, and I was like, it's a sign. That's what I told to myself. It's a sign. We need to connect. And I couldn't sleep the whole flight. I spent the whole flight thinking if I should pitch him at 30,000 feet of altitude. and at the end I decided it was probably not a very good idea. And we landed, and I asked for the email. And I sent him an email like that. I thought it was nice. They make fun of me because it was too romantic. But that's the first time they heard from us. And then we started getting a lot of references from people that we knew that had access to Sequoia. And that's how it happened. So I really recommend getting warm introductions from entrepreneurs or other maybe angel investors or maybe VCs that are very connected. It's relatively a small network of people. So we're meeting with another investor, and you know how Sand Hill Road is, that it's this big place, you cannot walk basically. And we finished a meeting, and we had a final partners meeting with Sequoia. And so we're trying to get there, and the Uber is not coming, so we have no ride. We don't know we're gonna get to that meeting. And then I see this big truck coming. I'm like, we're gonna hitchhike. I tell my partner, we're gonna hitchhike, we gotta hitchhike. We hitchhike, and it was a big truck. It was actually like septic water tank, And I get on the truck, and we start driving, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna drop you here. I'm like, no, you're gonna drop me in the entrance of Sequoia. So I think we're the only entrepreneurs in history that arrived in a septic water tank truck in the office of Sequoia. I think they were looking at the windows thinking, these guys are fucking crazy. But yeah, like, you gotta do whatever it takes. Yeah. You build it over time. I think they start also trusting you more with time, and the relationship stop feeling as an investor per se, but it starts feeling more as a partner, that they're there in the trenches, they're building this with you. And I think those are generally the best investors that you can find, those that you can speak about the serious challenges that you have, without any type of worry, because they're there pushing with you, they're there next to you at the same type of facing the same type of challenges. It doesn't happen immediately. It grows over time, but I'm fortunate to have some of those relationships, and I also like to keep a very open approach, because you cannot have a relationship that has this much experience and thinks that everything is smooth, right? That would be actually like weird. I think every fundraise is challenging too. Like we've been very lucky to work with great investors, and the processes have been great for us, but it's tense, it's stressful. They taught us a lot. The no's and the rejections sometimes were very insightful and intelligent, and maybe we were not phrasing a solution to a problem right, maybe we were not pitching in the right way. So we actually sat down, with every no that we have, it's like, why did they say no? What can we learn from this? Many, maybe things related to the product, things related to the market, things related to lack of understanding of an investor of Latin America, for example. But it's always a good lesson, and I advise all entrepreneurs to actually, when you're starting a fundraise process, maybe you always create a list of what are the target firms that you wanna pitch to. Maybe you start with the investors that are maybe the less important for you or the less unlikely to invest in your business. They're going to take a meeting and they're always going to give you honest, good feedback, and it's also a great way for you to practice. And then you leave like let's say your first choice, for maybe a second part of the process once you have all of that learnings. So that's what we did in our case. It depends each round. At the beginning, for example, if you're doing your seed round, they invest much more on the market opportunity. Investors might invest in how you're seeing the world in a different way. Maybe you have a unique approach to a problem that wasn't being solved in this specific way. So I think startups generally have or founders generally have a unique way of seeing the world. It might be super simple, right? I think there's better way for people to buy products, which was in our case. We know how to solve that. So there's many cases. I think every successful company has that. So that at the beginning, they invest more in you and the market. And as you go into more mature rounds, they invest on execution, and how well are you growing? How well are you executing on that vision? How well are you scaling? So it becomes a much more data-driven process than just, okay, I believe in this founder, for example. And especially as you go to your B, to your C, that there's a lot of that. So those processes are typically, you gotta drive also competitive process too, and drive have as many interested investors as possible. And of course, it's an intense process in terms of due diligence. You gotta have the numbers, you gotta show the progress, it becomes a deeper dive on the key metrics of the business, and sophisticated investors are always looking for what is that specific metric that is showing amazing progress. What is it like? Investment industry don't understand about tech companies sometimes is that if they grow so fast they can get to this scale, but there's a unique metric inside that company that gives you the certainty that if they get there, eventually it's going to be a massive business. So good investors look for that, and looking for that, they need to look at a lot of data. I think you also need to, the same way that they look for references about you, you need to look for references about them. And there's plenty of startups and plenty of companies where you can ask, how is that partner? How is that firm? It's a good way of validating and knowing, who you have in front of you. We personally like to thinking a lot on the benefit of the entrepreneur, because if the entrepreneur is okay, the business is going to be okay, their investment is going to be okay. So typically, sophisticated investors are not going to ask for anything abnormal, weird, in terms of terms. It's going to be pretty standard, pretty vanilla, pretty entrepreneur friendly, and I think that's what you should look for. Also, having a good investor early on guarantees that you're going to have good terms throughout your whole life of a company, because you can always say, listen, why are you asking me for this? I already have this very clean, So I think it's a little bit of all of that, and then there's negotiations, of course. If you have more options, that's always gives you more leverage to negotiate better than if you don't, But I think that applies in any type of negotiation.